Well, first of all, I just love skiing, like so much. There's nothing in the world that brings me more joy ever.
Yeah, I'm scared to death right now, but I've got this. Like, I know deep down inside, I'm capable of what I'm about to do.
I came back way stronger. I felt like the rehab was pretty simple and straightforward. And I learned how to appreciate my body and how to take care of it, what to eat and like to stretch. I was 18, so I felt like I was invincible at the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Athletic Stance Podcast, a skier's perspective with your host, yours truly, Scott Chrisman. In this podcast, I have made it my job to go out and interview skiers at the highest level of the sport, to explore their perspective on life, what shaped and influenced them to become the person they are, and a whole lot more. Our first sponsor is Northwest Tech. If you haven't heard of them yet, you're missing out. They hand make customizable 3-layer outerwear to order in the Pacific Northwest. And that means you know that it keeps you warm, dry, and looking unique while you're sending it around the mountain. They've been generous enough to give me a coupon code for my listeners. Use the code AOS75 to get $75 off any custom piece of outerwear. Their site is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by POC. POC makes the best helmets, goggles, and protective wear out there. They've been dedicated to protecting athletes since day one, and I wouldn't wear a different helmet, goggle, back pad, or hip pads. With their spin technology and VPD system, there are no other products on the market that are like it. Definitely go and check out POCsports.com and protect yourself today. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Athletic Stance Podcast, episode 12. In this interview, I got to talk to one of my old friends and fellow big mountain skiers. He has always impressed me with his ability to balance work, professional life, and skiing, and his ability to just be authentic and professional in his skiing career, and his ability to be exactly himself in this world has always blown me away. I really appreciated this conversation with Griffin Poised, and I hope you guys do too. I'm Griffin Poised. I'm a professional skier. I've been skiing since I was, I think, 2.5 or 3. I guess I can't even remember learning how to ski, which is kind of funny. I was born in Austria, but grew up in Sun Valley for the most part. Now I live in Jackson, Wyoming. Awesome. Did you grow up ski racing at all? How'd you get into the sport? Like, you started super early. So did you ski race, or have you always just been into big mountain, or what was that for you? Yeah, a lot of big mountain skiers. I grew up ski racing, and I raced with the Haley and Sun Valley ski teams growing up. And I definitely have like that program and those coaches to thank for all my skiing fundamentals. And I think I skied until I was 19 or 20 through my sophomore year of college. And then just with going to school and racing, I kind of felt like you need to do one or the other. And so kind of stopped racing and moved on to skier cross for a while, which was also turned out not to be my thing, but then eventually made it to some big mountain contests. And that's I got kind of lucky and did really well in my first few big mountain contests. And that's kind of how I got on the scene. Yeah, man, totally. Let's revert back to the college thing, because I know you really value having a college education. You've written some articles about that, or maybe there's a video that you made about that, or you talked about it. What has having a college education given you in the world, and how has that helped you as a skier and a person? Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So I went to school for 5 years. I got my undergraduate degree and my master's. And towards the end, I started skiing more and taking the winter's trimester off. And in the end, it was super helpful in terms of my career, just approaching sponsors and being able to present myself professionally, and then also kind of parlaying those sponsorship into, more business opportunities. For instance, what I do with Kesley Skis, I'm really involved in their marketing, and I don't think I'd be able to be in that position without having gone to school. However, there's kind of a caveat to that. I think now in like the ski world, it's so competitive and there's so many young ripping skiers that, if I was in the same situation now, I'm not sure if I would go to school right away. I'd probably try to, if I was really into skiing, I'd probably take some time off and try to chase the dream when I was 18 versus, I got into it when I was like 22. And now I feel like that's, kind of old to be starting a ski career.
Yeah, it's cool how you've been able to leverage your education in the ski world, and having skied for Kesley and you being the team manager, that was it was cool to see that you could take that level of professionalism or that knowledge and education and use it for something that benefited all of us, I feel like. So you said that you had success in big mountain competitions to start out. Where were your first big mountain competitions, and how did that look like? What was that path that how did you start picking up sponsors and then translate that into skiing for TGR and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's funny. I can kind of trace my whole ski career to this like 1 week in February when I first started skiing, and I entered this like Dash for Cash thing at the Canyons, which was basically this race down this natural half pipe. And I heard about it the night before, and there was like a $2,500 first prize. And I was like, man, I haven't heard of anybody going to this thing. And so I show up, sign up, and I end up winning this race. And it was pretty janky. It was like a 1 minute course or a 50-second course with a hand time. And I beat the guy that got second place by like 0.2 of a second. So far within the like margin of error for a hand time. And I got $2,500 and he got like a jacket or something. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I'm making money skiing. And 4 days later, I used that money to enter the U.S. Extreme Skiing Championships in Crested Butte. And
hometown represent. That's where I'm living right now. Sorry to interrupt.
And the extremes are kind of this classic, like the oldest big mountain competition. And it's a totally different style than a lot of other venues. Crested Butte's far more technical, which apparently suited my style. And it's kind of a crazy story showing up in Crested Butte first, or maybe it was my second big mountain contest, and I had to go through the qualifiers, which was like, I don't know, 90 people. And I like skied this line that I didn't want to crash, but I wanted to make it. And I skied this line that's like, I thought was enough to make it. And, I get the results for the qualifier, and I'm the first dude that's cut. I'm like the cut guy, and I'm just so bummed. I'm like, oh, my skiing career was going so well. I just made $2,500, and now like I can't even make it past the qualifier. And so back in those days, they'd give you your scorecards so you could see like what you got dinged on and what you did well in. And so they put out the scorecards, and I like grab mine, I go through them, and I like start doing the math, and I'm like, they added my score up wrong. Like I should be like three points higher, or 3 places higher. And so I like go to the director. I'm like, hey, I think you guys made a math mistake. And they're like, oh, no way. Like, okay, you're in. Like, we'll fix it and you'll be on the start sheet tomorrow. I was like, amazing. And so through that, I ended up winning the contest overall, which had, I don't know what the prize money was, like $6,500, and like great bragging rights and like good clout to have. And so within like a week, I made like $9,000, and I was like, oh, more money than I'd like ever made during any summer work. Like, it's like this skiing stuff is so easy. And, from there it got way harder, but it did like put me on the map. And it was like the street cred you get from those big mountain contests is kind of invaluable.
Yeah, totally. I think it's with the merger of the Freeride World Tour and the Free Skiing World Tour, and then separating again, and the Subaru Freeride Series being created, and then that ending, I think it's kind of gone a different route at this point, or, it's like the 4-star, I don't think the 4-star qualifiers for the Freeride World Tour quite have the same power as the Extremes or the Free Skiing World Tour did. But yeah, man, I assume that it probably was like a huge confidence booster as well.
Absolutely. Like back in, when I was doing those contests, the level of clout was like, pretty big. And I feel like with the tours, especially the Freeride World Tour being really Eurocentric now, and, a really limited free skiing world tour, that's not really the case these days. But when I was doing it, it was, like you said, that both financial and like confidence boost, like, all right, I can like hold my own with these guys. And so it was something special for sure.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I threw a 720 on the head wall. I think it was 2013, maybe 2012. But I think it was 2013. And when I threw it, people told me that you are the only other person that has thrown a 720 in the head wall. I don't know, is that true?
Oh, that is absolutely not true.
Okay.
Like, I've thrown a 7 on the head wall. So I'm glad like the rumor mill is out there though, like perpetuating my like status in Crested Butte.
Oh yeah, whenever we're competing in the head wall, people are like, "Yeah, Griffin Post threw a 7 off that," or it's funny. It's
awesome.
It's a rumor that goes around. So that's hilarious. I think you have a commitment to finishing what you have started with college and stuff like that. And I'm wondering, do you have any like morning routines or evening routines that you hold to, or things that you have have they been consistent the whole time? Like when you're traveling, it's super hard to hold towards, a morning routine, like get up at 6 o'clock in the morning every morning if you have to be up by 4 to go out and start hiking and skinning or whatever. But do you have like a morning routine or any sort of rituals that you do at the morning or in the evening that you have to hold to?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say like I'm definitely a morning person, and I love that moment. I love coffee, first of all. Like that's, motivates me to get out of bed pretty much every morning. And also just that kind of quietness before the day starts. And, that can be hard to come by if you're traveling with a big crew and, everybody's on their own page and on their own programs. But I always try to have at least like 15 or 20 minutes just to myself. And it's not like I'm doing any like crazy meditative stuff, but just, enjoying that quiet part of the day is really important to me. And then I guess on the other end, I'm like in the evenings, I'm being somebody that probably gets up at like around 6 usually. I'm, go to bed early and kind of have the same thing, like enjoy that, like, 20 minutes to myself, or like being able to, recap the day or kind of take inventory of like what's changed since the morning. And so just bookending my days, I'd say, with like some personal time has been really important to me through everything. Yeah,
definitely. I think for me, I try and, recenter at the end of the day and just like inventory what's happened and, like mark my wins, think about what I want to do the next day, and then just like let it go. And that really helps me. So do you have any sort of a diet that you stick to normally? Like it's really hard in Europe to try and stick to, a certain diet when you're around like the meat and cheese and bread sort of thing. But is there, like when you're home, is there a specific diet or a way that you try and eat normally?
Yeah, on the road, as you said, it's, I try to kind of roll with the punches, because that's, such a cool part about traveling is kind of enjoying these, local foods and local cuisines. And if like you're not willing to embrace that, I feel like you're kind of losing out on a major part of that. But at home, I'm kind of like not purposely paleo, but I end up, not eating a ton of bread and just sticking to a very like kind of protein and plant-based diet. And that's, there's no reasoning I have behind that. It's just kind of naturally what tastes good to me and like what I feel like gives me the most energy.
Yeah, totally. Swear to God, I've seen those piñatas before in the background.
I know, so I have these two in my house. I have, amongst my other like various random items, I have these 2 piñatas that I picked up when my dad was moving out of his house. He was going to throw them away, and I was like, you can't throw these away. They're perfectly good piñatas. I like left catch them and came back to Jackson with the intention of, beating the piñatas. And then they kind of sat on my fridge for a while, and they started gaining like different hats and different like pieces of flair. They have like a cowbell, a couple slingshots, and now they have names. It's Milo and Otis, and now there's like no way I could ever like beat them. Somebody suggested that we like beat the piñatas the other day, and I was like, what did you say? Members of this household.
Yeah, those are my friends. How could you?
Shared so much together.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's awesome. I got so distracted by that. I feel like I've seen them before. Like, I feel like, who knows? Like, I feel like I've seen them while I was out in Jackson. Maybe I was at your house when you weren't there sometime. I don't even know.
Just in the house, checking out what's going on.
Just stalking you. No, I have no idea. Really have no idea, but they look very familiar to me, and I got distracted. So, what's your favorite part about skiing? This might be a really hard question to answer, but it's I love everyone's answer because they all end up being very similar, but very different in the same right. So,
yeah, I think my favorite part about skiing is that it's such this common ground that you can share with like everybody that skis, and like more than anything I've experienced in my life, it comes down to who you're with versus like where you are. And I've had like some of the best days of skiing in my life, like on a slushy day in Sunday River, just because our crew was so awesome. And so for sure the conditions matter, but like sharing that experience with a close group of people, I feel like there's very few other activities, maybe surfing, but even then that's kind of like individual. Whereas skiing, like you're skiing the same run, you're having that same very similar emotional experience throughout the day, and it's unique like that.
Yeah, totally. It's hard to catch a party wave when you're surfing.
I've tried, but it's usually doesn't end well.
Yeah, totally. I think, one of my favorite things about it is, just the community, and something that I've talked about with a lot of other people on the podcast is just how it really, you can look at someone who's another big mountain skier or even just skier in general who's, been immersed in the community or immersed in the sport for long enough that even if you haven't met them before, you just kind of have this innate connection to them. And that's one of my favorite things is like, you can make best friends with someone that you've never met before, and like, a couple runs if you guys are really synced up. So
absolutely, it's like this common ground. Like I got an Uber to the airport in Chicago a few weeks ago after a Warren Miller premiere, and I was talking to the Uber driver, and it's like, what are you doing in town? I was like, oh, I'm a skier. I was in town for a movie premiere. It was like, Warren Miller? And I was like, yeah, actually. And he was like, so pumped. The 6-year-old dude that I would never have guessed skied. He was just like, we talked the entire way to the airport about skiing and like how amazing it is. So you're right. It's like that common thread that unite the most different people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny how, some people that you never really expect to like have skied, they'll just be like, oh yeah, I love Warren Miller films. I've been to every one for the past 25 years or, and
sure.
Yeah, just those connections. It's pretty cool how ski movies as well can really bridge that gap between what we go out and do, what you go out and do, in the most remote places in the world, and then you can kind of bring it to people's couches or, bring it to the theater and it really bridged that gap. I think that's, one of the amazing things about ski movies, and they're so unique. I was talking to a friend last night about it, and he's like, what would you call a ski movie? Is it like a documentary or and so I'm curious as to like how you would classify a ski movie. It's almost like it just is a ski movie, but
yeah, totally. That's such a funny, because I've had that same question before. Like, so is it like a documentary or like a narrative? I'm like, well, it's like kind of a little bit of both. It's a lot of ski action. Sometimes there's like a voiceover, sometimes just us talking. It's kind of funny, kind of serious. Yeah, there's not like a good way to surmise the ski movie.
Yep. Sometimes there's a little bit of a storyline. Sometimes there's a lot of a storyline. Sometimes there's no storyline at all.
No matter what, some people love it and some people hate it. So.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Whether your matchsticks ruin in Rose or whether your matchsticks drop everything, or Warren Miller, old school with him narrating it. I think those are still some of my favorite movies. Just him narrating the footage.
Yeah, for sure. You can still hear his voice in your head. Like, if you don't do it this year, you'll be 1 year older when you do.
Yeah, I was just thinking that in my head for sure. So you've obviously gotten to travel a number of places, and like you were saying, you love to experience the culture or the foods. What's your favorite place that you've ever traveled for skiing, and why? What made it so special or so amazing?
So as far as straight, gluttonous ski action, Alaska's always hard to beat. But as far as ski culture and travel goes, it sounds so cliched, but the Alps are, so amazing, especially the Austrian Alps, where you'll go to these small villages to some resort you've never heard of, and it'll have more lifts than, almost any resort in North America. And everybody in town is tuned into how the skiing is, who won the last World Cup race. And, skiing is just so intertwined in the culture there. And it's just it's so much more of a way of life there than I think almost any other place in North America or the world for that matter. And so, it is cliche, but the Alps are, every time I go there, I'm like, man, this place is amazing.
Yeah, totally. I remember, I think I was 15 or 16. One of my first experiences in Austria, mind blowing. I rode the plane with Lindsey Vonn back when she was, we were both younger, and she wasn't as well known. I'm like, who is this chick? She's beautiful. I want to talk to her, but I'm 15 and don't know how to talk to girls, and all nervous. And then talk with her briefly, and then my coach comes and picks me up, and I don't know why, but it was just me and him. But we drove out to Innsbruck and then up to Pitstall, and I remember there were just these billboards of Benjamin Reich all over the place, and I'm like, you would never see this in the U.S. You would never be able to. It's I heard it compared on that trip. It's being on the World Cup is equivalent to being an NFL or an NBA star in Austria.
For sure. I mean, there's probably one billboard in the whole U.S. that features skiing outside the 7-Eleven in Big Cottonwood Canyon. But yeah, over there, it's they're rock stars for sure. And it's just kind of reflected in the culture as well. Yeah,
totally. Have you ever skied Pitstall? Side note.
I think so. I get a little lost sometimes when I try to think of all the places. Pitstall, it's a glacier, right, in the summer?
A glacier in the summer, and has a train that goes up 8 minutes through the side of a mountain.
Yeah. I was there last fall, actually. We did this event there. It's, awesome. The whole scene, the train, the racers, and yeah.
Totally. It's like Mount Hood, but out there, and you just have World Cup team after World Cup team lined up, or first four World Cup teams, and then Europa Cup teams, and then it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's Mount Hood on steroids for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I remember being out there and riding the lift with or the gondola or tram, whatever it is, mixed between the two. I think it's a tram, but it's a smaller tram.
Yeah.
With Julia Mancuso and Ted Ligety and Bodie Miller, and I was just so starstruck. I'm what am I doing here?
For sure.
Super awesome. So you have some pretty good success on the social media side of things with Instagram and stuff like that. What's your opinion on the social media skier and the state of the industry as far as that goes right now? And
my favorite topic. I think it's kind of crazy how how much social media has influenced the ski industry. And for better or worse, I mean, on the plus side, I think, a lot of skiers are in charge of their own destiny now. They can, if they create good edits and, are able to create a captive audience, like Tom Wallish, for instance. His career, beyond being an amazing skier, but he can attribute a lot of his success to social media. And I think on the men's side, it's still very skill driven or talent driven. I think I get far more frustrated on the women's side where you see, I'm trying to tactfully put this.
You see a chick's butt in a swimsuit and she's
yeah, I guess it's more about sex selling, for the lack of a better term, and it's not always talent that's presented first, which if I were a girl that had a lot of raw talent and that's what I wanted to focus on, I'd be pretty frustrated with that. And I'm not sure if there'll be some sort of renaissance of the hardcore skier, or the person that just wants that just inspiring talent focused Instagram or Facebook feed. But it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. I just get a little bummed when I know a lot of female skiers are absolutely ripping and at the top of their game, and are what I think are some of the best skiers in the world, and they're having a hard time getting sponsorships, where a lot of their constituents are getting these big deals and might not be as talented. And I'm frustrated for these girls, and so maybe it'll shake out, maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's definitely a tough time. You definitely the females, if they want to, can build a following on Instagram faster than men can, I think, because sex sells. So in some ways it can be an advantage, quote unquote, but it's not true to the heart of skiing, and it's not really true to the heart of what a lot of women in the industry want, as there's a lot of very active feminists and women who want to hold their own power, and then you get in this this debate of well, if that's what they want to do with their body, then they have absolutely the right to, but are they really doing it in helping the sport, or are they just helping themselves? And yeah, it's definitely a big rabbit hole, that's for sure.
For sure. I think the industry has started to appreciate, in my opinion, or at least recognize that if you're just chasing the sex sells motto and you have a ton of followers, you may not be have as much influence over those followers. They maybe are often go for people with less followers but far more clout amongst their followers.
Yeah, totally. Actually having influence and impact in the world, instead of just, hey, here, look at my butt, I'm surfing. Did you grow up in Sun Valley, your whole ski racing career, Sun Valley Ski Education Foundation and Haley, or?
Yeah, exactly. So there was two ski teams. There's the Haley ski team, which where I started on, and then the Sun Valley ski team, which pretty much I skied between those programs from when I was 8 to 18 or so.
Okay. That's such a beautiful valley. I was out there in August coaching a kids camp called Progression Camps, which I don't know if knew Jordan Niedrich at all, or the Niedrich family. The camp that he started before he passed, and was out there helping his brother out, doing some coaching for those kids. And that valley is just incredible. Got to meet up with Lexi DuPont, and that's where did my first interview, and actually how we kind of got reconnected. So yeah, man, I love that valley. What was it like growing up there? What were your favorite parts? How do you think that helped shape you as a skier? You said that you owe a lot of your skiing success to those people. So how exactly did that help?
Growing up in Sun Valley was awesome. I'm so lucky to have grown up there, just being able to ride my bike out my door and get on the trails in the summer, where I grew up, I could basically walk to like the Warm Springs lift and, go skiing after school. And so without that, like, I don't think there'd be any way that I'd be where I am today. And, Bald Mountain Sun Valley is, just relentless as far as fall line goes. It teaches you like how to be on it, how to have like good edge control, and just such fundamentals that, there's really few places on that mountain where you can just kind of run it out into the flats. Like you have to be in control pretty much the whole time. And even if it's groomers, it teaches you like to be on your game no matter what.
Yeah, totally. I always, when people ask, like people will say like Deer Valley has the best groomers, or, Vail or Steamboat or Aspen. And I'm like, hands down, Sun Valley has the best groomers out there. Like there's nothing that touches it.
Like Warm Springs top to bottom is about as like good as it gets.
Yeah, totally. We had J2 Nationals out there at least one year that I went, and I just remember how much I absolutely loved crushing those groomers down to the GS and slalom start. That was...
Oh, for sure. Just like you get the early morning up too, and it's all perfect. And yeah, there's no better way to warm up for the course, I feel like.
Yeah, totally. And what was the other one? The Laura Flood Memorial. I actually won that overall my last year ski racing. That was like my big win last year ski racing. And that, yeah, man, I just loved that whole, it was kind of a mini culture, or like you had kind of that same support in a miniature version as like Europe in some ways, where, the locals, you'd ride up the lift with them and they'd be like, oh, you're in the race, like, what's your name? Like how the last couple of days been going? Like, I feel like there was a pretty genuine interest in ski racing, whereas a lot of other resorts, you wouldn't necessarily have that from the locals. So
totally. Like everybody knows somebody that's in the race.
Yep.
It's like that tight-knit community.
Yeah, totally. Random question. Do you know Callie Brown by any chance?
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I grew up ski racing with her, and I don't know, she's just a friend, always had huge personality, and I think she was a little bit older than me. How old are you?
I am 32.
Okay. Yeah, so she was probably in between our ages. I'm 27, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah. What's one piece of encouragement or wisdom or advice that you received that stuck with you, and who was it by?
I guess one of the mentors I sort of had growing up in Sun Valley was this guy, Bozo Cordozo, who was like a Sun Valley heli ski guy, just been in the mountains, been in Sun Valley for a long, long time. And we were planning this trip, and, he told, it was a very like ambitious trip, and, he kind of sat us down as like, you guys like be confident going into this, like, swing for the fences, like see this through, but like also have the humility to know when like maybe this isn't such a good idea. And although it was within the context of this trip, I think like that's like a very good approach to have in the mountains, is like you need to be ambitious and you need to like go for it, but also like balancing that with a sense of humility is like pretty key. There's that saying that there's old skiers and bold skiers, but there's no old bold skiers. So I think that's maybe a longer iteration of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think longevity in the sport is hard to come by. We push our limits so much, and on a regular basis, it's definitely, there are people who have been around for a long time. Like one of the only ones that pops into my mind is Seth Morrison, because I get to see him randomly around Crested Butte. He was a very bold skier, and he's still kicking around, but he's definitely taken it down quite a notch in the last 10 years or so. And
for sure, my first heli trip in Alaska was with Seth randomly, and I was like, it was me and him going on the helicopter, and I was just like so starstruck, and he'd said like 3 words to me the entire trip, and I was like just like totally in awe of the entire situation. And we were filming with TGR, and we flew out to the zone, and I'm looking at this mountain, like trying to find the biggest piece of the mountain I can bite off. And I'm like, so what are you going to ski? And he's like, I'm just going to ski right down the gut. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, man. Like, we don't know what the snow conditions are. This is our first run of the trip. Like, I'm just going to like do a warm up run. I was like, oh, right. Like, that's a good idea. So yeah, even like those guys that have the perception of just like hard charging, they're a reason that they've been hard charging for so long.
Yeah, totally. Got to be smart and calculated about your decision making. I feel like there's a lot of people in the competition scene right now who are like, this one competition is going to make my career, which I don't think follows through to be true at this stage in the game. Oh, like a win is not really going to put you in give you the same clout that it did for you, depending on where it is and what it is. But, you know, people are swinging for the fences like day one when it's icy conditions and stuff like that. And you're like, is that really the smartest move? And then you have to compete with that. And it's like Russian roulette because you get like 10 people who are swinging for the fences. Someone's going to land something. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'd criticize like that mentality, but I've totally been there. So like, I know what it's like thinking that, you know, that one run or like that one contest is going to change your life. And I've like made some super, super questionable decisions in contests. And you know, you look back, you're like, what was I thinking? But then you're like, well, I can remember like, you know, that moment that I was in and that like excitement and that like, you know, just clouded thought that you're susceptible to.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, one of the things that I find about the personality type of an extreme skier or an extreme sports athlete is that we often learn through experience. There's so many things that we can hear and we don't really realize it to be true until we've gone out and tested it and like learned the hard way or not the hard way. But
yeah, experience is the best teacher for sure. Like people can tell you the same things over and over, but then once you actually make that mistake, you're like, like that's what they meant by that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for instance, when I was out in San Diego, the takeoffs for speed flying in Crested Butte are really steep, so you start running in a couple steps and you're pretty much in the air. And out in San Diego, the takeoff was quite a bit less steep, and I just didn't really make this connection, but my friend in front of me was like, run like hell, like you gotta run. And I just kind of like took it for granted. I was like, I'll be able to get off, like I always get off the ground. And then all of a sudden it's like I made my last step before the run-in stopped and went at like 25 miles an hour onto my butt on a rock, and I have a bruise the size of like a grapefruit on my butt right now and was limping around for a while. It's like I just had to learn from experience.
For sure. Like, why didn't I just listen? That would have been so much easier.
Right? Wouldn't have been limping around. I was doing some training with Navy SEALs on Thursday of last week and was running around in the sand with Navy SEALs, like half limping, like they can't know, like I gotta get, you know. And
yeah.
if I didn't do that, then I would have been 100%. But you live and you learn.
For sure.
You know, some of the stuff that you do out in Jackson and beyond, like I would assume that you have some fear that you deal with. If you didn't, I'd call you crazy. What are some techniques that you use to overcome or deal with fear, and how do you practice those? I
mean, for me, I'm almost always scared if I'm like doing something that's, you know, if we're filming or, you know, we're on that trying to like push it for the lack of a better term. But I think it's important to like distinguish between, you know, healthy fear that, you know, you're scared because what you're doing is scary, or that fear that, you know, is more like guttural and that like something is like really not right. And it's not always easy to, you know, make that distinction, but if you can learn to, you know, figure out if it's just, you know, your brain telling you like this is scary, or like, oh man, something just doesn't feel right. And for me, like before I'm going to ski a line, or like, you know, that last, maybe not 10 seconds, but maybe like 5 minutes before. I kind of think of like everything that could possibly go wrong, which kind of sounds like a weird strategy to like think about right before you're going to drop in, but it's more about like trying to figure every like what you maybe overlooked or what you're not paying attention to enough. And if you can like, even if you just briefly consider it, then should that happen, you like at least have some sort of like game plan already made, versus like dropping in and something completely unexpected happens. And then you're like, that split second decision is like that much more difficult. And so, yeah, my pregame routine it comes from like, I'm not sure where, I think it was like somewhere in the business world or something about like launching an idea and like somebody just sitting there and being the devil's advocate, being like, why, like this is a bad decision because of this and this and this. And so like kind of bringing that into like, skiing as far as assessing like what you're actually doing is, I found, I think it's helped me.
Yeah, totally. I think, that's where kind of the term calculated risk comes into play. And, when you do consider what can go wrong and you have a game plan, then that split second decision making becomes a lot easier, because your direction, what your out is, instead of having to like figure out what's going on, what your out is, and making that decision all in a matter of, less than a second or a couple seconds.
Yeah, having that plan can be pretty key.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been able to travel a lot. We've talked about that a little bit. What have you seen is happening with global climate change, and how are you trying to mitigate it? And what kind of advice would you pass on to others that are trying to make their biggest impact or least amount of impact in the world as far as environmentalism goes?
I struggled for a long time with this just because, it was something that I felt very passionate about, but I'm also in the situation where I have this, huge carbon footprint, and I'm like, I just didn't think I was like the best spokesperson for it. But I think it's important to like, when you're talking about these things, you're not asking people to make these drastic life changes. You're asking them to make conscious decisions, where you can, and then also, support legislation and, our elected officials that are going to implement these changes. Because as great as like individual actions are, that's not going to solve the problem. It's more about widespread policy changes. And with those, you're able to move the needle, and just being educated and being able to talk about them is, most of the battle, because people, if you're not armed with some, a small amount of statistics and these, ideas and solutions, it's easy to get like being down by that. I work with Protect Our Winners, and we just had this athlete summit a couple weeks ago where we talked about all these ways to, the things you can do and the ways you can act locally and nationally. And it's definitely an uphill battle in certain spots. Like I'm from Wyoming, and, it's kind of frustrating. I don't think, I can call my senators every day and ask for these things, and it's probably not going to change things. And so you need to pick your battles. And so whatever I can achieve locally, and then whatever efforts I can, also bring about in other states or other places where, there is the opportunity to make these changes. It's just a matter of kind of choosing what you're going to go after.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, whether you're you who has a bigger voice in the internet and a bigger following, or someone who doesn't really have much of a following, we each have a voice, and we each, as far as calling a senator or, depending on where you're at, your voice or my voice or Joe Schmo's voice is all the same to the senator. And that's where I think it's really uniquely awesome that we each hold the same power, no matter what we've done in our lives or what we've, accomplished, that gives us this accreditation or this appeal of being an authority figure. It's that it all looks the same to a senator or a congressman or woman. So
yeah, absolutely. And just being willing to discuss it and like being like inspiring other people, I guess, to take action. You know, that's like the beauty of like the infinite power of ideas, is that like, you know, talking to somebody and inspiring others is really like limitless.
Yeah, totally. What's one piece of advice, and we may have already covered this with the other question that I asked you, but what's one piece of advice that you would give to a kid or young adult that wants to do what you do? What would you pass along to them?
I think as far as the skiing part goes, you know, ski every day. Like anybody can ski powder on bluebird days, but like going up in a foggy, rainy day, like that's when you become like a truly excellent skier. And then from the business side, it's, you know, don't be afraid to ask for help from everybody, but, you know, kind of expect it from no one. I think when my career was getting going, like I had these people that I'd known for a long time, and I was sure they were going to help me out, and, you know, I'd email them or call them and just be crickets. Whereas I'd meet some random person that through bizarre connection, and they, for whatever reason, go out on a limb for me and like introduce me or get me like set up with something. And, you know, they had like no obligation to. And so like without the help from those people, it's, you know, I never would have been able to get where I am. And so, you know, help comes from really bizarre places sometimes, and you can't be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah, totally. You know, I think none of us are able to accomplish anything in this life without a team behind you, whether it's like this big unified team or it's just kind of this support network that you leverage that, you know, even if, yeah, I remember like driving around, I was in between the Moonlight competition and the Kirkwood competition my first year. I think it was 2011 or 2012, and I was at a Chili's, and a random trucker, we got into conversation. I was telling him that I was going around competing on the Free Skiing World Tour, and he ended up writing me a check for $500 because he wanted to support my journey, and all he asked for was that I sent him some emails every once in a while to keep him updated on what I was doing. And, you know, we lost touch a couple years ago, but it was awesome. It was just a random person that was totally willing to help support my dreams and my goals, and that $500 helped me get to Kirkwood and like pay for a hostel, and, you know, helped me get home. So
that's so awesome, man. That's, I mean, exactly what I'm talking about. Just having those like, just, you know, those unexpected places, those unexpected boosts. It's cool that that's, you know, still out there and such a big part of like the process.
Yeah, totally. If you could have one significant impact on the world, what would it be? If you were to like leave a legacy, or, you know, have one thing that you were leaving the world and you knew that you had accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, what would that be?
Oh man, hard-hitting question. Like all the other ones I've had like a pretty good answer for. I think this question definitely changes like as you kind of get older, and for a while it was like basically changing the way that people, you know, viewed skiing, viewed mountains, and viewed the way that like mountains could be skied. But as my career progresses, I mean, I think just, you know, that adage of leaving the world a better place than you found it. And I think for me, my biggest like goal or biggest opportunity with that is with, you know, protect our winters and climate change, and being able to cause some sort of an impact that is going to allow future generations to enjoy this sport. Because in all reality, climate change won't have as big of an impact on me as it is going to have on my children and their grandchildren. Like they're going to be dealing with a world that's like we can't even imagine. And so I have the opportunity to like, I think, you know, leverage my voice and my power to make that world, you know, as great as the world that like I inherited from my parents.
Yeah, definitely. I think, man, every skier right now, I think, wants our children to be able to ski if we have children. You know, I think it's something that has shaped who I am, and it's kind of like this cliche thing of like skiing teaches you about life, but it really does. It teaches you, you know, so many of these skills like determination and willpower and overcoming fear and, you know, how to eat healthy or how to work out and take care of your health and, you know, any number of these things. And you can find them across the board, but nothing for me is quite as inspiring as skiing. Like some people find it in football, or some people find it, you know, in soccer, but there's just nothing quite like skiing.
Absolutely. I think the mountains and skiing teach this, you know, or require this sense of independence and like that I think few other sports or lifestyles can achieve.
Yeah, like one bad decision can leave you paying for the consequences for several days or weeks or months, and so yeah, there really is like this decision-making skills that you learn, and like that you start to realize the impact of every little decision that you do make. And I think that is important because in society we kind of have this surface level tangibility to what our actions actually are causing. We just kind of think that it's like this indestructible bubble that we just like poke and it like never does anything. But when you're out in the, you know, in the mountains, in the skiing world, you really start to realize that like one decision or, you know, one little thing can change the whole course of, you know, your season or your week or.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's like, I think few other activities that have such or can have such like consequence. You learn that pretty quick, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else you want to talk about right now?
No, not really. Just kind of getting like geared up for ski season. I finally had like a nice fall and had a little bit of, you know, downtime, and finally I'm getting that like itch a little bit more again. So pumped to get in the hills this week.
Totally. Adrenal glands are like finally calmed down and ready for another season of going out and pushing the limits. And
yeah, exactly.
yeah, man. I feel that. I've been getting my rest for sure. I haven't gotten to ski in 7 months now, and I'm actually missing opening day tomorrow, unfortunately, at Crested Butte. But I'll be out there this week, and I'm excited, man.
Yeah, it's a long season.
Yeah. Where can people find you on social media?
So my Instagram is @GriffPost, and Facebook, the same, facebook.com/GriffPost. I guess if you use Twitter, I'm on there, but I wouldn't expect any hard it's on my Twitter feed.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter too, but I think the last time I was actually on Twitter is like 9 months ago or something like that.
Right.
Not the skiers' choice for social media, I don't think.
No.
Business world, they love it.
Yeah.
But well, sweet, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Great chatting with you.
Cheers, man.
All right, later.
Well, there you have it, folks. I hope that you really enjoyed this conversation with Griffin Poised. He's an amazingly insightful guy, and I hope that you got a better look into his personality, what he's about, and took some actionable steps that can help move the needle forward for you. Don't forget to get out there and put in the work and really apply the things that you're learning from this podcast to your life, and let me know what kind of results you're getting. Shoot me an email, scottytheskier@gmail.com, or find me on Instagram or Facebook, Scott, spelled with 1 T, Chrisman, Chrisman. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and if you've made it this far and you've loved it, don't forget to rate, review, and mash that subscribe button. Much love and happy shredding out there, guys.